Welcome to the latest episode of WSP's Anticipate podcast. I'm your host, Pooja Ganatra, an acoustic consultant at WSP Middle East. As many schools and universities around the world pivoted to online classes in the wake of the global pandemic, there's now equally as much attention being placed on the return to in-person lessons. With this latest shift in the continuously evolving education landscape, schools and universities must now look to adapt their current spaces to new requirements and factor in new challenges, particularly the way students hear, see, and experience learning in a post-pandemic setting. I'm joined today by Gavin Hyatt, Head of Operations at Taaleem Group, and Cassey Stypowany, Lead Consultant Building Acoustics at WSP USA. Gavin, Cassey, it's great to have you both here with us today. To begin with, can you give us some background on your roles?
Good afternoon, and it's a pleasure to be on the podcast with yourself and Cassey, and thank you for inviting me along. A little bit about me and the company I work for. So I work for Taaleem Group, an education provider in the Middle East. We're one of the largest providers. We have 17 schools located in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and we cover various curriculums from American curriculum, British curriculum, international baccalaureate, and we deliver those curriculums to over 19,000 students. We've got ambitious plans to grow. We've got some exciting new projects coming up. It's a great honour to work for Taaleem, to be honest, and my role within the business is I'm the head of operations for the group, and I manage the health and safety, the operations of the building, campus improvements, new project builds, and business development opportunities. So it's quite a wide range of topics I cover, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds pretty exciting. Thanks, Cassey.
That does sound exciting. I like that. So I'm an acoustic lead at WSP in the US, and I head up the acoustic department in New York, as well as the business development for the Northeast. And so we're working to grow, looking for those opportunities as well. Externally, as a consultant, I feel our role is to educate the client on all things acoustics so that they can make informed decisions about their space that fit their goals, especially when acoustics can come with a price tag and is generally invisible to the eye. It's more of an experience within the space, and it's important to me that my clients understand what that experience will be before the project finishes design.
Makes sense. All right. So just kind of looking at where we're at now, in the new normal or the next normal, it's sort of becoming clear that schools and universities must now look to adapt their current spaces to the new requirements. So to start with, Gavin, could you share with us your experience in the UAE over the last 1.5 years in just adapting the classrooms and modes of learning to mitigate any challenges that have been posed by the pandemic?
It has been a challenging 1.5 years, and we're still there at the moment, especially with the education sector and delivering high standard education to students. Obviously, the biggest challenge was when COVID initially hit us in March last year for the UAE specific. We had to close all the schools to look after the children, and from the government initiatives that were put in place, and we had to close them over our March break period, and we essentially had 2 weeks to try and deliver an education, all of a sudden what was done initially face to face to then deliver it online. So the teachers who would normally have the break on March and looking forward to going home were all of a sudden then having to get their education ready on an online platform, and it was done over a short period actually. But I think fortunately Taaleem were in a position where we had the platforms readily available, we had the technology. It was just a case of making that switch, and my little boy was one of those students who was fortunate enough to still get the education whilst we were in the pandemic. And yeah, it was challenging, but at the same time, what we had from the teachers on the platforms and the lesson plans and the live classes that they were now streaming from their own homes and the tasks that were being set, it was really good. It was still good. And I think that this period has been really beneficial to probably most industries actually, although it's been a challenge, it's really made every company think differently, and especially the education sector, it's come on leaps and bounds in certain areas of what we probably wouldn't have had to do or we wouldn't have been thinking about, but it's kind of been forced on us. So yeah, it's been good. And now we're back at 100% capacity in the classrooms, and we still have the online platform ready and available for those students who aren't attending in the building. And yeah, it has been a challenge, but it's been an exciting development and opportunity for us.
Absolutely. I think just where you mentioned about how it's been different for different businesses, here we are sort of sitting at home and having our podcast online as well. I think it has changed the way we think to different bounds and different levels, which is great. So, yeah, absolutely. All right. Cassey, could you share some of the trends you've witnessed in the US education sector? Have you been seeing the schools and universities pivot to the unique challenges that we're facing?
It's been impressive, just as Gavin's mentioned, like how everybody switched over so quickly and had that ability that they didn't know that they had. It's very similar to what you were saying, Gavin. It's everybody switched online. It worked for a while, and then there was a huge push to get back in the classroom, especially for this fall semester. And at the moment, I'm talking K through 12 sector. I'd say the universities have been pretty comfortable keeping online when they've needed to and taking certain classes that don't need to be in the classroom and leaving them virtual if needed. But K through 12, there's been a big push. So a trend that I've seen is a lot of private schools, charter schools, Catholic schools, their enrollment has peaked because those were the schools that were able to get back into the classroom first or were more willing to put something in place to make that happen. And so their enrollment kind of skyrocketed, and the public schools were lagging a little bit behind, having to conform to some different, stricter rules than some others.
I think just adding to that, I suppose we've seen that similar trend as well. With all of our schools, we were very focused on getting the students back in the building because the face-to-face and the bricks and mortars education delivery, it does make a difference, and it is what parents want. They want to send the children to school, and they want to get them out of the house, and they don't want them behind the screen all day. And we have seen enrollments increase as well this year, which is, I think that's been part of, the fact that we've had schools running back at 100% capacity. And I think one of the important things to mention for us is, although we was having online delivery of the education, we've not actually seen an impact in our results. It's actually been one of our strongest results in years. Some of our schools are seeing better results than the world results, and it's what our teachers, it's commendable to teachers and staff and students what they've achieved during this pandemic.
Yeah, that's pretty commendable in a way that coming from these challenges and everything, they've managed to just, excel with their results. I think that's great. And I think just at the point, Gavin, where you were mentioning how parents want to start sending their children to school now, I think we as consultants would kind of look at how we're making sure that the environment is good for their health and well-being, because that is one of the major aspects right now, and looking at their comfort, which directly impacts their productivity. These are some really crucial factors to ensure the student's performance as well. And in terms of the physical built environment of the reimagined classroom that we're talking about now, let's kind of open the floor to you and Cassey on what trends and observations have you seen in regards to, say, the indoor air quality?
I think indoor air quality, it's really important within the schools, and it's something we've always focused on. We've had planned preventive maintenance, with ACs, ducting, cleaning, making sure the ventilation and circulation is all running. But I think one thing we probably would recognise, that since the masks were introduced, we've actually seen a a lot less students, with the common cold, for example. And I suppose that's because it's not circulating around as much, but it does show how important that having correct ventilation and circulation within a building does improve, the general sickness. It goes a lot less within the students and the staff, and it makes a huge difference. And it's something we are looking into, how we can manage it better as a group across all our schools, and continually improving the standards with the air quality. And we always do try and encourage our principals, our staff, our students to, especially when we get to the cooler months, have that natural ventilation, take the education and learning outside in the playgrounds. And that's why we build the campuses, to be able to cater for that, and it's important to have those things in place.
Absolutely. I think that is very important. And just to kind of add to that, because I had done my entire dissertation at Taaleem, one of Taaleem schools, and Gavin was very kind to assist me through it with Jumeirah Baccalaureate. And it was a really interesting observation that we made as well, with how indoor air quality is such an important factor when it comes to just the room and how people feel within the room, in terms of headaches or stuffiness, and how they would just perceive the space to be. And when we were conducting some qualitative analysis while doing our interviews, it was interesting to see that wasn't one of the major concern, but they do recognize that this could lead to something worse. And we should be looking at, how we can make our indoor air quality better, especially in the pre-KG classrooms, and, sort of looking at how they shouldn't be as stuffy as they would intend to be because of the carpet and other finishes around. So yeah, it's really interesting if the way we're kind of looking into these aspects of schools. Cassey, I'm going to ask you about acoustics and the auditory experience.
Yeah, it's actually interesting with the air quality piece that then plays into acoustics for existing schools. They're putting in these supplementary units in the classrooms to kind of help purify during the day, and they're loud. And then you add the masks, and so it's a distraction, and it can impact how the students are learning and behaving, because now they can't hear their teacher as much. They're going to get distracted. Maybe they're misbehaving. So who knows what they end up doing. In terms of the auditory experience, I think it's going to hopefully push new designs to put those filtration systems, almost taking a hospital design into schools and seeing how important it is in both spaces. It's just as important. And so once it's actually integrated into the building from the start, it's quieter and it doesn't impact the students as much. When it's not a part of the building systems, they rely on window AC units, which are inherently loud. Maybe you open windows and there's traffic outside. That can affect the way the students are learning and perceiving what's being taught, because maybe they miss something, or they hear a noise and now they're looking this way and now they've just missed everything the teacher has said.
Yeah, and I think the point where you mentioned about the masks being a barrier as well, I think in terms of the communication, in terms of muffling of speech, all of that is kind of the whole communication between the teacher and students has been affected by that. And it's something that we should be considering as well, moving forwards with designing our schools with better acoustics, because if the masks come back, you don't want that struggle to happen, and it's not ideal. An ideal situation for sure.
Yeah, and if they are priority to have the masks, then it's best to have the background noise level quieter, so they have the best chance of being understood.
Absolutely.
I think interestingly, just touching on the acoustics, obviously with yourself, Pooja, we did do some work within one of the Taaleem schools, and we changed out certain ceiling panels and improved the acoustics there. And we did it in a number of classrooms, targeting classrooms we knew that would either be noisier generally, such as the pre-K with the age of the children, or the language rooms where we knew the students had to listen obviously that bit harder because of the language delivery. And the rooms we did roll it out in, we genuinely did see significant improvement with the reverberation time, and even the teachers and the the students were commenting on it, saying it sounds different in here. I'm not having to project as loud, and it genuinely has made a big difference. And it is something from that initial review that we did that we are rolling it out across other classrooms within the group and looking to improve those acoustic, just so that the teachers they can relax and it's a more calming environment.
Absolutely. I think we did kind of make sure that we were targeting the right classrooms as well, looking at math, pre-KG and Arabic, if I remember well. And we also had the indoor air quality meters within these classrooms to see the link between the tiles that we're replacing and the air quality within the space, if that has a direct effect or not, because sometimes the glue that we use in the acoustic panel insulation could sort of pose high levels of VOC content or any particulate matter that could increase up in the atmosphere. And I think it was kind of interesting to see that link as well, because the first week that we installed the tiles in while the students were away, there was a high peak of the VOC content, which then reduced once we kept the windows open. So it's interesting how all of these parameters are just directly linked to each other. And it's really important to kind of make sure that we have all of this looked at while designing a classroom. Yep. All right. Let's look at lighting and how we can maximize natural lighting.
It is actually something we do review when we're designing our new buildings, and we've just opened one of our campuses to the secondary this year in Abu Dhabi. It's Raha Khalifa City, and with that building, when we was going through the design phases and the construction build itself, we actually built in more natural light in the area. We had skylights within corridors. We built courtyards on the ground floor, which were then projected the whole building height. So as you're going through the corridors, there's a lot more natural light in those spaces, and it is really important because it's more welcoming. It's a calmer environment for the students, and it's more natural at the end of the day. And the less lighting, artificial lighting we can have within a building and utilize that natural light, it does make a big difference. And even down to the different types of bulbs we use around the building. We use softer lighting LED bulbs for that reason, to get the best lighting through the building as well, which is a bit more easier on the eyes. So it is something we do review, and it is something we continue to review within all our schools, to how we can improve it and encourage the outdoor play as well, and use the natural environment that we have around us.
Absolutely. I think when I was conducting my research, I had a lot of literature review that I was doing, and this just reminds me how natural lighting in the olden times, they just had open classrooms in the Greek periods, or when teaching kind of became a part of life. It was just out in the open, and then they started having these, okay, we need to kind of enclose it because the weather isn't fine, and then they started enclosing the classrooms, and then came, okay, we need AC and ducting and venting within them. And then came the idea of, okay, we actually still need lighting and windows and having acoustics in place as well. So I think it just kind of was a development where it was out in the open, wherein lighting, natural lighting, was kind of the main important aspect of it that people should be able to read. And then it kind of went on to understand, okay, there's a lot more that would go into the whole learning experience of a person. So yeah, it all comes down to that. And I think we've kind of touched on this before as well, where we mentioned about how masks are causing the muffling of speech. And I think the whole voice lift technology and some microphone would kind of help with that. Do you think that's something that we could potentially have within classrooms, Gavin and Cassey?
Some kind of microphone kind of underneath?
Yeah, underneath your mask, essentially. Yeah.
I could definitely see some schools considering it if masks are just always going to be around for a few
Yeah.
more years. I can see it being considered. I probably feel like it would be considered more in the universities where they have large lecture halls.
Yeah.
And really projection can be difficult. And when I went to school, we didn't have microphones at the podium. I don't know why, but we'd have a large lecture hall, and it was just up to the professor to project that out to everyone. So I could definitely see it being implemented in that setting.
I think, even in some of our buildings, and well, in quite a lot of them actually, we actually have the voice lift technology that you're referring to there. We have it in our old auditoriums. So we have speakers around the room, so it does project what's happening on stage and things like that. So it is something we do already in certain areas of the building. In classrooms specifically, not something we have at the moment. And I think again, we like to encourage. Obviously, COVID's a bit of a different story at the moment, but we do encourage the movement around the building, utilising the opening spaces and outdoor areas, because we don't want the children just sat in one space all day. It's good to get them out and moving, and I think we'd prefer to invest in those other areas rather than trying to, I suppose, invest in the technology and in the classroom with microphones and things like that. I think the classrooms are of a size where, we don't need to do that, because there's 24, 26 children in maximum, and the classes, it's not as Cassey said, the big university type lecture theatres. It's a standard classroom.
Cassey, I know you're quite passionate about schools and designing for the well-being of students and sort of looking at the acoustics within these classrooms as well. So in your view, how can we design and build spaces that support students' well-being, productivity, and results beyond the pandemic?
I think it's important to reduce as many distractions as we can, and that's a lot of the K through 12. Um, a lot of classrooms, they like to have their doors open, so then you get the noise from the corridor, and you've got some students that are paying attention to that rather than the teacher. And the finishes within the space, like the ceiling tiles you guys were mentioning earlier, it just helps with the intelligibility. So it becomes a space that they can focus in rather than picking up every distraction that might be around them. Designing, as I mentioned earlier, for the air ventilation to be quieter is such a big piece too. I feel like that gets overlooked a lot of times, and then teachers are struggling to project and they don't know why they're struggling to project, and it turns out to be that it's just the background noise level is too loud.
Gavin, would you like to add something to this, maybe?
Yeah, I think, when we are designing the buildings and the spaces, obviously we do take into account the acoustics and, as you mentioned earlier, the lighting aspects of everything. But one of the things we focus on as a group is to have spaces that aren't just a classroom. So we have a lot of breakout spaces where, the teachers can take the students to a different area, or it could be actually self-study areas for the students. We try and have those in wider corridors or in different spaces, and, focusing on, I suppose, softer seating, softer furnishing, which all actually add to the, I suppose, the acoustics and the way that the classroom environment works. And we do encourage those different styles of learning spaces than, what would be the old school traditional just chair and desk. We're now adapting workspaces and taking softer seating, standing tables, all different types of approaches to have, I suppose, the most getting the best out of the children and inspiring them, and, igniting their passions. And it's important to have different styles and areas within the building.
Just to kind of look at how we got the results from the interviews that we took with Jumeirah Baccalaureate as an example, and looking back at the acoustics within the classroom and how important the students and teachers felt it was for them to kind of focus and avoid any distractions within them. It was, I think, 72% of them were kind of saying, yes, noise doesn't allow us to focus within the classrooms. And teachers were also kind of always, yes, we need to look at the acoustics within our classrooms and improve them, because we've got to shout sometimes, and not shout as you said, but raise their voice when they're trying to speak to the students. So I think these things do kind of impact directly on the well-being, productivity, and eventual results that the students would come out with within the classroom. Just to kind of look at how post-pandemic online learning has now taken over, and we're looking at the whole switch between virtual, and we have actually touched on this before, wherein we've discussed as to how the students have already come back in the classrooms, and we've kind of gotten away from the virtual way of learning. What do you think that kind of has an impact on just design thinking for future schools? Do you think they would always have this consideration of keeping it online as well as within classrooms?
Yeah, I suppose there is companies out there already who they do the online learning specifically, and that's the way they some students are attracted to that approach. But I think for us and our values of what we have as a company, we will always be investing in bricks and mortar. The the online learning and the delivery, it was excellent, but it's just not the same as the face-to-face interactions that you get with students and teachers. You pick up the micro expressions, you pick up the way a certain child is in different environments, and I don't think we'll ever pull away from that model. But yeah, definitely we will invest in education technology, and it is something we're actually looking at the moment, and looking at how we can modernize certain ways of learning and modernize the innovation we have within our buildings, within our campuses, to make that learning, that the students and the environment that they have as beneficial as possible, and to get the best out of everyone, and take them forward into the future.
Yeah, it's used as now backup. They want to develop it. They saw where their weaknesses were. They want to refine it and then keep it for, when I grew up, we would have snow days. I'm from Buffalo. It's 5, 6 feet of snow overnight. They'll never have snow days anymore. I don't think they'll just, now they have the capability to switch over to virtual, so no one has to go out and travel if weather conditions are poor. So I do see them refining it and keeping it kind of on the back burner just in case it's needed, but more transitioning into the classroom again.
I suppose one of the only things to add from my side is the other part that goes hand in hand with the whole topic we've discussed today is sustainability, and how we create a greener environment within not just the education sector, but all the sectors and all the different industries. And it is something that we're definitely looking into and improving on as much as we can on sustainability, creating, students are now coming up with student councils of how to, okay, what can we do to make a greener school, what it is we can look into. And it is something that we genuinely believe at Taaleem we've got to push forward on and improve on, daily basis, how we can go about doing it, and encourage paperless environments where we can, encourage solar, plastic reduction, water, utilities. I think all these things do play into that build when you're designing a school now, and it's something that's not going to go away, and we've got to create that environment for our children, our children's children, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it's nice because when they see it in their environment from a young age, that's something they can continue to carry off because they've experienced it and understand how it affects them when the environment's so well thought out and sustainable.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that was great food for thought, and every sector should definitely look into sustainability and how to make the environment greener. Gavin and Cassey, thank you again for joining us today. I've really enjoyed hearing your insights and discussing the way forward for the education sector. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed today's episode on mobility trends, please hit the subscribe button via our SoundCloud channel to stay up to date with more insights from industry experts and WSP's thought leaders.